Welcome friends and fellow parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and even siblings of children with special needs. I have a special message today for you, one of encouragement and hope. Did you know that according to the CDC and a study that was conducted between 2009 and 2017 with 88,530 participants, 1 in 6 children have been reported to have been diagnosed with a developmental delay? Those include autism, ADD, ADHD, blindness, cerebral palsy, learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, stuttering or stammering in the past 12 months, and any other developmental delay, including and not limited to any form of dyslexia and other reading disabilities. In my home alone, I have 4 children with diagnoses. This is important information for what I'm about to tell you. 2 of my children have been diagnosed with autism, 1 with social anxiety disorder that's made worse by sensory input, and 3 out of the 4 of my children have been diagnosed with dyslexia. That's a whole boatload of trouble. To top it all off, I was called to homeschool each and every one of them. Let's go back several years to my first child that was diagnosed. He was about 4 years old and I had no idea the struggles that I would come across in raising him and his siblings. He would run around everywhere he went. He was constantly cracking eggs on my floor just to see them break, and he was dumping everything, including full jugs of laundry soap and liquid dish soap on my kitchen floor just to swim in it. Once he even stood on my counter and threw all my dried goods across my kitchen floor. Of all my children, he scared me the most. He was the one that would have very little regard of safety and would run into traffic with no concern of what it would mean if he got hurt. He was raised in the church. We struggled every single weekend to get him to take part in his classes. We couldn't leave him alone with his teachers, otherwise he would completely disrupt the class. A few years after his diagnosis, I was asked to teach adventurers class. Imagine, a mother who was exhausted and at a loss to control her own children, who looked and behaved undisciplined, was asked to serve in ministry. What a blessing it was to learn my own strengths and abilities that was purely guided by God. I learned how to ask for help through prayer, but also from those in my church family. One afternoon, I was particularly frustrated during an instructor's meeting, and I told the other instructors my struggles. The director suggested that we fast and pray over my children, and to wait on God. By then, we had already discovered that milk and ice cream were causing extra struggles in our son. We even learned about gut health and how a sick gut can rot teeth. But we were having a hard time dealing with and managing his impulsivity, as well as his other inappropriate behaviors. In church, he would jump over pews, crawl under them, and just disrupt the whole service. It was particularly disheartening watching other people's children and how well they sat. But that was me feeling sorry for myself in my trials. Through the fasting and praying, I was inspired to teach them in other ways. I was inspired to be patient and to get to know them and what they're all about and what each of their deepest struggles and desires were. At one point, I was questioning how God could reach my child's mind and heart when nothing else could. I questioned this for a long time. I was convinced that some of my children would never know how to choose baptism. But by God's grace, one after another, each chose to be baptized. They had come to me asking. I had a very candid conversation with the pastor and asked his opinion on them asking to be baptized, as well as if he felt if their diagnosis would interfere with their choice. I was reassured in that conversation that nothing can come between God and my children, not a diagnosis or anything else. Even now, my children are learning and thriving. They have come to learn to listen to Bible stories and raise very good questions and points during our discussions. I have discovered that they learn at a very fast pace, even though they do not read at the same rate as other children or do what other children do. They learn through the world around them, and they now listen to me and my husband. The road to this point has been a long, suffering one, and still I can see the impulsivity issues in our eldest son, but I can also see something else. I'm witnessing God's work in my children. God has a plan for my children, and He has a plan for your children as well. I'm also witnessing God's work in my life. Having these amazing children has led me to the understanding that I know more peace following Christ than I did trying to follow every other advice out there. That's not to say that I didn't take anyone's advice, or that we haven't listened to professionals, but rather we have become more discerning in whose advice we actually took that lined up with our goals and methods. One by one, each and every struggle has become less and less daunting. My mission field in my own home was used to grow my own fruit, the same fruit found in Galatians 5:22-23. It says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law." There is a peace that passes all understanding when you put your faith and trust in the all-knowing Father who loves us very much, the Father that loves our children more than we can even love them. It's hard to know peace when everything and everyone around us, especially our precious children that prove to be our biggest trials, distract us from our relationship with God. I don't know where I would be without the help and guidance that I've been given through the years. I imagine I'd still be chasing my children around, trying to get them to listen and sit and obey. Without God's help, I wouldn't have been led to the people that have been the most influential and the most encouraging in my life, so as to help me make the best decisions for my wonderful children. I wouldn't be the person that I am today, and neither would my children. I've also been led to believe that God has a plan for each and every one of our special needs children, and those plans could be fulfilled if we just put the trust in God and submit ourselves to His will. I pray that you will find your answers at the feet of our Savior's cross, the same Savior that suffered the same sufferings that each of us go through, feeling lost, abandoned, in great despair, and even looking for a greater purpose for all of our lives. He suffered so He could relate to us and to show us that everything is possible if we just believe. So from one loving parent with special needs children to another loving parent, aunt, uncle, grandparent, sibling, or even caretaker, keep the faith. God bless until we meet again.